Supreme Master Ching Hai joyfully present the Shining World Compassion Award to Dr. Jeanette Rowley, plus $10,000 for the Vegan Society as a humble token of helping your work. With all love and high salute for your noble efforts for animal rights. May you and all your colleagues enjoy continued success and constant protection by heaven. Dr. Jeanette Rowley, Vegan, Human Rights or Animal Rights, Part 1 of 2. Continue watching to find out more.
Salam, righteous viewers. I'm Valeria. I just said hello in the Gagauz language. The God-trusting people of Gagauzia send joy and blissfulness to you and your loved ones. Welcome to today's program entitled Dr. Jeanette Rowley, Vegan, Human Rights or Animal Rights, Part 1 of 2, in which we have the privilege to present to you the knowledgeable vegan rights advocate of the Vegan Society UK, Dr. Jeanette Rowley. Dr. Jeanette Rowley has said, "A society that respects veganism and accommodates vegans cannot sustain and has to address entrenched prejudice against non-human animals." With a strong socio-legal background, Dr. Rowley has garnered worldwide recognition as a leading authority on veganism, human rights, animal rights, and the law. In 2012, she founded the International Vegan Rights Alliance, or IVRA, now known as the International Rights Network, or IRN, to propagate anti-speciesism. Dr. Rowley has generated vast international interest and motivation in addressing the very important subject of veganism, which corresponds to the human right to eliminate all kinds of suffering, including that of an animal. Inspired by the concept of otherness in philosophy developed by Emmanuel Levinas, Dr. Rowley strongly advocates for capitalizing on the vegans in the UK, having the protection of human rights and equality law to encourage massive shift in law and policy regulations much needed to free our animal friends from arbitrary abuse. Dr. Rowley became a vegan at a very young age. She raised vegan children, and now they are also raising vegan children.
I was around 9 years old when I became aware that the happy lambs that were jumping around in the field were what was on the plate on Sunday afternoon. And I think from that very young age, I became very aware that there was something not quite right about that. And over the years, my thoughts developed, and I became involved in animal rights as a teenager. And my veganism has grown from a very young age. I've been vegan for many decades. I've raised my children vegan, and now they've gone on to have their own vegan children.
Dr. Rowley is a very strong advocate for veganism as well as human and animal rights. She shares with us what motivates her to keep fighting for the animals.
Suffering and justice and human compassion. The main motivation is animal rights. I believe animals have got the right to live their life free from human oppression, and animal rights is a matter of justice. And the motivation just never fails, really. It's just something that's incredibly important to me. And of course, advocating for veganism is supporting animal rights, because we use law to protect vegans, and by protecting vegans, we're helping to bring about policies and practices that we have to change to make sense of talking about animal rights. We can't bring about animal rights overnight without social policies and practices to facilitate animal rights and give respect to animals.
Dr. Rowley explains the reasons why she was inspired to create the International Vegan Rights Alliance Network as a platform to advocate for animal rights.
It became very clear to me that to make sense of all the talk about animal rights, we really needed to create the kind of society that respects animals and has compassionate policies in place that give effect to animal rights. So I became aware that if we can find a way to protect vegans to live with compassion for animals, then that is a good contributor to bringing about helping develop the kind of society that we need that can support animal rights and develop the rights animals should have. So I started the International Vegan Rights Alliance in 2012 with the goal of bringing together a group of academics and vegan lawyers who were committed to this kind of change, to support vegans, to help them live with their deep convictions about animal rights, to help bring about these policy changes in society.
The International Vegan Rights Alliance serves as a launchpad for vegan rights and animal rights. Dr. Rowley talks about the activities that were being organized and the achievements made through this network.
In the beginning, what we needed was to get together to discuss the laws that we could use. In terms of human rights provisions, we needed to understand how these are interpreted in different countries around the world, and try and understand also how the human rights provisions are represented in certain equality laws. And I think we've established that the UK is a bit of a leader in this regard. The right to freedom of conscience is applicable to vegan convictions, and this is represented in our equality law. But that's not the case around the world. So we use the human right to freedom of conscience to protect vegans, and we have annual conferences where we discuss the laws that we can use and the challenges we face. And we are having success. Lawyers around the world have had success supporting vegans with food at school, food in hospital. And in the UK, we've had success with employment cases, out-of-court settlements for vegans who've been bullied in the workplace.
The freedom of conscious human right gives a person the freedom to have a thought, point of view, or even consider a fact that can be totally independent of other people's opinion or viewpoint. Dr. Rowley gives us an example of how this human right is protected according to the law in a recent legal case that she won, as well as the deeper implications of why winning the case was so important.
You may have heard about the NatWest case, where we won an out-of-court settlement for a vegan who was verbally abused by a NatWest employee. And the benefit there isn't the tangible benefit for the vegan. What we must keep in mind is that when a vegan takes a case to law, what they're doing is representing the suffering of animals to law. They may receive a tangible benefit for themselves, but what they're doing is generating respect for animal suffering within human rights. The human right to freedom of conscience, as it protects vegans, recognises the suffering and moral standing of animals simultaneously. And the benefit of winning the NatWest case isn't so much for the vegan. NatWest has around 3,000 employees, and they are now informed in their equality and diversity training that respect for vegans is important, which generates a compassionate diversity policy in the workplace.
In the book Critical Perspectives on Veganism, Dr. Rowley wrote, "Human rights are animal rights." She will now elaborate further for us regarding the link between the rights of humans and the rights of animals.
We need to understand that the mission of modern human rights is to emancipate from suffering. That is the idea behind modern human rights. Now, given that we understand that, if human rights law then protects vegans, we have to ask why. Why does human rights law protect vegans? Because it's well known that vegans live with compassion and deep convictions for other animals. They recognise and want to live according to the fact that animals suffer. So if human rights protects vegans, then we can see that animals are beneficiaries of those protective rights that are meant to emancipate from suffering. So my argument is that if human rights is about suffering and it protects vegans, then it must reorientate to also protect animals as well from suffering. It's bizarre, really, that we have to fight for the right to live with compassion for other animals when veganism itself, I think, is a manifestation of a much wider ethical regard for animals. Nobody wants to hurt animals. Everybody cares about animals. We have over 300 international treaties for the protection of animals and the environment. And we've got lots of anti-cruelty legislation. So why is it so bizarre that vegans want the right to live with compassion for animals? It's very strange.
The High Court of the Indian state of Uttarakhand in 2018 granted all animals within the state the legal personhood status. Dr. Rowley explains why granting legal personhood status to the animal is appropriate and justifiable based on the principle that human rights are animal rights.
So in that ruling, it was basically observed that we should have compassion for other animals. They suffer, and they were regarded as having personhood in law, and that as rights holders have value in themselves. So if the value is suffering, then this is an example of how human rights are animal rights, because there again we revisit this value of suffering. The right not to suffer through arbitrary oppression or power in any way is recognised there. The basic rule that we should really acknowledge is that we all suffer. The community of species beings on this planet suffers, and that's what's really important. Protective rights are about emancipating from suffering, and on that ground, other animals are equal beneficiaries.
Supreme Master Ching Hai joyfully present the Shining World Compassion Award to Dr. Jeanette Rowley, plus $10,000 for the Vegan Society as a humble token of helping your work, with all love and high salute for your noble efforts for animal rights. May you and all your colleagues enjoy continued success and constant protection by heaven. Welcome to part 2 of Dr. Jeanette Rowley, Vegan: Human Rights are Animal Rights. In order for a compassionate society to exist, Dr. Rowley emphasizes the importance of using protective rights as a means to evoke a deeper level of compassion that extends to animals as well.
We need to think about rights as being protective rights for those who suffer. We live in a community, we're born into a community, and we should include animals in an extended community. We should have a system of ethical justice that includes animals in our community. And we should see rights as protection from arbitrary oppression and to emancipate suffering. And I think that's the starting point. And from there, we can abolish the idea that animals can be owned as property or labelled as resources. And, these steps need to be taken, and then other things can follow, such as words we use to describe animals as vermin or livestock. This kind of language is oppressive language, and it conditions young people into accepting them. But I think we have to start with the idea that protective rights are for everyone who suffers, animal or human, and that there should be no resource status or property ownership of other animals. Protective rights are about emancipating from suffering, and on that ground, other animals are equal beneficiaries.
In India, the state of Uttarakhand became the first state government in the world to issue a complete ban on slaughterhouses. On the possibility of a similar ban to take place in the UK, Dr. Rowley envisions that it is possible.
Yes, I'm eternally optimistic, and I have faith, and I would like to think that animals one day won't be regarded as property, and slaughterhouses could be abolished. It's important that we legislate to the effect that animals are no longer property.
Unfortunately, we have yet to see world leaders in other countries take similar actions to protect the rights of humans and animals. Dr. Rowley suggests that this can be seen as a violation of the very rights that they are sworn to uphold.
Absolutely. There's a violation of animal rights and human rights there, and particularly in the international human right to food. I spoke about the right to food very early on in the conferences of the IVRA, but more recently, one of our friends, Jo Wills at Leicester University, has contributed a chapter to our forthcoming publication on vegan freedom of conscience around the world. And in this chapter, Jo explains very clearly that state subsidies for animal agribusiness significantly contributes to the underperformance of the human right to food, because the elements of the human right to food, those being the right to adequate food, sustainability of food, accessibility of food, and so on, can't be achieved with the way food is produced at the moment. I think in Europe and America combined, the state subsidies equal around $60 billion per year. And Jo makes a very clear case for subsidising 100% plant-based vegan food production to give effect to the human right to food. So very definitely there's a violation of animal rights and human rights there.
Under the promise of protective rights, the world-renowned spiritual leader, our beloved Supreme Master Ching Hai, has a stern message for the world leaders, whose lack of action within their governments toward the injustice perpetuated towards animals, the climate, and humans continue to exacerbate the current global crisis rather than resolve it.
If the planet has trouble, if all people or any people are killed because of the climate change, the government leaders, I say, are guilty because they have the power to stop it, to change it. I hope they rethink about that so they don't have to go down to hell and answer to the king of hell or the Maya waiting for them, Satan waiting for them. Like we attract like. No need to say that I'm threatening anybody. You are in power, you're in privilege, you are well paid, you're getting rich by the taxpayers of your country. You should do what you must do in order to rescue your people. And if you don't, then you're guilty of murdering humans, not just animals. I'm telling you the truth like that.
On June 26, 2020, Supreme Master Ching Hai called for the world to wake up and be vegan, while explaining the heavy karmic burden placed upon those who choose not to.
If you say it's your choice to eat what you want, then I tell you this. Remember, every time you put any piece of animal's flesh or blood or bones or whatever, intestines or whatever that yucky things from animal in your mouth, you must remember many are dying for it or dead because of that. The animals are suffering torturous death because of that. Most of animal product in your mouth. Many people die because of infectious disease and other disease related to animal product, which you promote or advocate or support or condone. So remember, you are responsible for all these deaths. So think about it. Apart from that, every time you put a piece of animal stuff in your mouth, you destroy a part of the planet. You destroy the future of our next children generation. So you will be responsible for all that, even if no one to blame you or no one to accuse you. Your conscience will.
Dr. Rowley thought Master's message was very powerful and brought up the assistance offered by the Vegan Society to help those who wish to join the vegan family and to facilitate them to start their vegan journey.
My feeling about the message is that it's very forceful and direct, and I think it will encourage people to face up to what they're participating in. I would say to non-vegans that the Vegan Society and the vegan community welcomes you. There is a way to see the truth, and it may be difficult, but when you do, you open your eyes and your hearts. We're waiting to share that journey with you and help you stand with animals and for your own health, physical and psychological and well-being.
Apart from creating vegan awareness through social media or advertising, Dr. Rowley encourages us to recognize a more subtle form of animal exploitation taking place under the radar and to make a stand for veganism there as well, for a transformative change in all aspects of society.
We can campaign for lots of other things. For example, resources in schools. I hear from vegans whose children go to school, and the first thing they start learning about is animal exploitation through songs, through storybooks. They're given, a reading book to take home. Their first reading book will be something that's revolving around animal exploitation. For example, pictures of cows being milked and the statement that cows don't mind because it doesn't hurt, this kind of thing. So I think we've got a lot of changes to campaign for, and I would encourage all vegans to be confident. Being compassionate is one of humanity's most basic characteristics, and there's no shame in standing up to live with compassion and, forcing law to change for us to be able to live with our convictions in all aspects of our life on a daily basis. Yes, it's important to help the younger generation to have access to veganism and transitioning vegans to sustain that, the transitioning process, and for everyone to have the opportunity to adopt veganism as a normal lifestyle choice.
In line with the logic that human rights are animal rights, there is a greater understanding now that the planet as a whole also needs to be considered. This understanding has been called Earth jurisprudence, which means that humans are in fact only one part of a great community made up of other beings whose individual welfare, including that of humans, are dependent on the welfare of the planet as well. Dr. Rowley concurs and shares with us her vision of the future of our world.
Change is coming around the world. We see more respect for veganism, more respect for animals, more respect for the environment. There's a kind of Earth jurisprudence emerging where the environment matters more, ecological issues matter more, and there's a younger generation that's very motivated with these issues. So I think that we're on the verge of great change, and it's much needed. My vision is for a world community that is implements a more ethical system of justice and stands against oppression and exploitation, and a community where we all care about others and feel this innate sense of beauty for each other that we were born with. We were born in community. We're not isolated atoms with individual rights. The duty is for the suffering of the other, and we need to manifest.
We are very thankful to Dr. Jeanette Rowley for sharing her in-depth knowledge of the legislation of human rights and animal rights, and for all her efforts to bring justice to all beings on this planet. May she and the vegan society continue to achieve great success in all their campaigns and endeavors. Supreme Master Ching Hai joyfully presents the Shining World Compassion Award to Dr. Jeanette Rowley, plus $10,000 for the Vegan Society as a humble token of helping your work, with all love and high salute for your noble efforts for animal rights. May you and all your colleagues enjoy continued success and constant protection by heaven. Supreme Master Ching Hai is deeply grateful to the beloved God for all the financial help, comfort, and support to the afflicted and needy, and or any good cause over the years, as a humble vessel for His compassion and love toward His precious children. To learn more about Dr. Jeanette Rowley, please visit vegansociety.com/Jeanette-Rowley. Wise viewers, thank you for being with us for today's program. Coming up next is Whatever We Want, We Will Have It, Part 6 of 12, and Between Master and Disciples, right after Noteworthy News. May God's immense love ignite the compassion in your hearts and lead you to embrace the wholesome vegan way of living.
Vegan side effect. God wants you bad.
Our programs offer many languages. Please visit suprememastertv.com/schedule and suprememastertv.com/VE.
Nos programmes offrent plusieurs langues. Veuillez visiter suprememastertv.com/schedule et suprememastertv.com/VE.
Nuestros programas ofrecen varios idiomas. Visiten suprememastertv.com/schedule y suprememastertv.com/VE.
हमारे कार्यक्रम पेश किए जाते हैं कई भाषाओं में. कृपया देखें suprememastertv.com/schedule और suprememastertv.com/VE.